Flames are coming out of the back of the F-50. Back in 2003, I was dating a girl who knew I was into cars and driving, and she had a friend who was dating a guy by the name of Alex Roy, who some of you all may know, but she said he was doing this Gumball thing, was looking for a co-driver, and I said, well, yeah, I want to do that. How do I get in touch with him? How does this all happen? She put me in touch with him, and he wanted to kind of interview me and check me out and see if I'd be the type of person that he'd be willing to spend a few days in the car with and, get a feel for how my driving skill was. So we met at this restaurant. He comes up there and he's got his laptop and, he's all eccentric. At the time he had a, whatever that purpley blue 993 Targa was. I don't know if he was into his scarf phase then or not, but certainly an eccentric kind of guy. I was just kind of thinking, who is this guy? The conversations went everywhere from different girls that he had dated and friends he had just, trying to establish himself to me in some kind of weird way. And, I was like, I was at that point like, is this the kind of guy I want to spend 5 days in the car with? But I didn't care. I was going to go on the Gumball and do one of these, road rally, the quintessential road rally of the time. And for him, it was Alex's first Gumball. This is 2003. So anyway, I think he liked me enough. And, over the next couple of days and weeks, we spent a lot of time communicating over text and whatnot. He's telling me about how he wants to, dress up his M5 as this police pursuit vehicle, but it can't imitate a U.S. police car because that would be police impersonation. And, he has this German police pursuit vehicle idea. And I'm just kind of shaking my head like, all right, whatever you got to do, man, as long as I'm sitting in the right seat as we're, racing across country together and I get to be a part of this, cool road rally. So anyway, we went out to San Francisco, which is where the rally started. In that year, we did the San Fran to Miami trip and, spent 5 days and, it was more about Alex's eccentricity along the way and just different costumes and PA system in the car and flashing lights. And they had put one of the film crew from the Gumball in our car. And, we became quickly known as sort of the weirdos in the Gumball and certainly drew a lot of attention to ourselves. And by no doing of my own and all Alex Roy anyway. So we went on to win the, quote, Spirit of the Gumball award that year, which I guess is somewhat coveted. I guess it's the same as winning the Gumball. As much as you can win the Gumball, there's really nothing to win. But it was at the time in my life one of the most fun 6-day adventures you could possibly have. You're in cars surrounded by all the most amazing cars at the time. I got a ride in an F-50 for 1,000 miles into San Antonio, which was totally wild. The parties were fun and everything else, but for me it was all about the driving and the camaraderie on the road. Alex and I got to know each other then, and 6 days, spent a lot of time in the car with each other and had a lot of laughs, and I got to know him pretty well. I was sitting a foot away from a guy for 6 days. You get to know a lot about somebody. There was a guy, I think he was at least a double amputee. He was missing a leg and maybe an arm, but we were driving somewhere down along in Florida, and he was firing Roman candles with his one working hand or something out of a window. And we still to this day don't know how he was driving the car, but there was Roman candles firing out of things. And that was certainly interesting. A guy brought a Koenigsegg CC8S. As the story goes, he had some issue with an oil cap on the thing that was broken, and there was no place that obviously had an extra oil cap for a Koenigsegg, but it turned out that it was the same oil cap that a VW used, or a Bug or something like that, and so it was just that kind of replacement. And I think that year he had some speeding ticket where it was over 240 miles an hour. So the story goes. I don't know. I got one ticket on the Florida Turnpike. The last day we were trying to get in it. Trying to beat everybody else in as you do in these things. And my ticket was 111 miles per hour, and all it was a fine, and paid it, and we were on our way pretty quickly. It was kind of no big deal. I think Alex Roy got a ticket when I took a leg in that F-50, and we were in Texas. I think he got a ticket, and we pride ourselves on our camaraderie together and using the police countermeasures in the car at the time, and we were a good team when we were in the car together, and we didn't really get any other tickets other than that the whole way. And at one point we were on the I-10, and it was us, that F-50, and Rob Kenworthy in his modified GT2, and we had our foot in this thing. We were flat out in our car. We're clicking by 140, 150, and we go by these guys around 150, and they're like, all right, well, they're gonna go, we're gonna go. And we're doing 150 flat out in this thing, trying to accelerate, but this F50 and the GT2 pulled away from us. As we're going 150, 160, we're going, and they're still just pulling away from us. Flames are coming out of the back of the F50, and it was just the acceleration that those cars had at 150 above and beyond what the M5 had was remarkable. That was pretty cool. And we had a train of, 5 or 6 guys who were really pushing it on that stretch across the I-10. We were good about not getting tickets, and there were a lot of other people that, constantly got tickets. But, even at that time, it was Alex with his Bearcat police scanner and CB radio and laser jammers and stuff. And so this, I think the Gumball was all sort of preparation for him for the Cannonball run. Even at that time, he had all of that stuff. It was before I think he had a fuel cell in the car. But, we were really good with the countermeasures at the time, lasers, jammers, diffusers. So a few other people had some pretty advanced police countermeasures at the time, but we were really adept at not getting caught. There were a lot of times where just our back and forth and using the scanner and hearing stuff and talking to the truckers. And, we were pretty good about avoiding the police. And, they were certainly out there and they were looking for us a lot of times. And we knew when to back off and, when we were in dangers of getting pulled over. But at the time, I had a job working for Bank of America, and I was in their compliance department of all things. And here I am racing across the country. And it was important to me not to get pulled over, not to go to jail. So we were measured in our approach, but we were also some of the faster guys out there as far as getting to the destinations. And it was about getting a good spot when you're leaving and managing the routes and being good with all that. And we had a lot of GPS in the car, so we kind of had a good way to get to where we're going rather than just kind of using maps and stuff, which a lot of people at the time were still doing. It was before the time of Waze and Google Maps on your iPhone and that kind of thing. So that was the one and only Gumball I did was 2003. And at that point, it was still relatively cheap. And for me, it wasn't my car. And all I had to do was get a plane ticket from New York to San Francisco and another one home from Miami to New York. And, it was disappointing to me. Everybody who was on the Gumball was, all rich and fancy and spending a couple of days and hanging out, what hotels they were going to hang out and party at for a couple of days in Miami to kind of wind down after the trip. And the day after we got there, I was on a plane back to New York and it was like, oh man, I want more, and it was just sort of a sad thing to have to leave that all behind and go back to the real world. Richard Rawlings was on the trip that year. And at the time, Richard Rawlings was in a big modified Chevy Avalanche, which I always thought was kind of one of the uglier cars, but he had the thing all lifted up and, jerry can, gas cans on the thing. And I don't think he could reach any kind of the top speeds we were doing, but I think he was just kind of moving along in luxury. And, he certainly had the loud persona to go with it. And, at the time I was like, who is this loud, presence? Just kind of everywhere you went, you kind of knew he was there. And he did it with, one of his girls or his wife at the time, but he was certainly tight with Dennis Collins, who had a black Maranello, which is, I think, the car that they set their time going across country in, which is a phenomenal automobile. So yeah, we got to know them a little bit on that run, not very well. The one time that we did have a really cool interaction with Richard Rawlings was we were flying across, I think, Louisiana, maybe even before then. We got to the Panhandle or something, and we were pushing and got to, one of these stretches of roads where there weren't a whole lot of frequent gas stations, and we knew we were getting close, and we actually ran the M5 out of gas. We texted or got to communicate with Rawlings that we had run out of gas, and he was awesome. He came by and stopped and let us, refuel with his jerry can. He dropped a jerry can for us, and we picked it up behind a guardrail. I forget exactly how that went, but I recall waiting on the side of the road. So maybe we waited for him, and he dropped one off. Anyway, it was really cool to have that camaraderie with anyone on there that could, pull us off the side of the road. But that's kind of how the Gumball was. Everybody's looking out for each other a little bit. Of course, everybody also laughs at everybody else when they get pulled over. It's like, I got pulled over as you're going by. In 2003, I didn't know anything about the Cannonball Run. I had no aspirations of doing a Cannonball Run or going from New York to LA nonstop. I'd watched the Cannonball Run as a kid. I was a car nut like everybody else. One of those cult classic movies you grow up on, and that and the Gumball Rally. And so this was the closest thing we knew of to getting, to being that or living that life or experiencing something to that effect. So I had no idea what the real Cannonball Run would be like, but at the time this was as close as you could get to the Cannonball Run, and it was everything and more to me on that front. You had eye candy for miles. Every one of the coolest supercars of that day were on that rally, and that was really cool. And we had some long days, some 14-hour day drives, and that to me was as much as I'd ever thought to go on one stretch. And at the time, I didn't even think about like what that would compare to the actual Cannonball Run, driving straight across the country. But it was exhausting. And part of the reason is, you get to where you're going, you stay up too late and have too much fun and get up and you don't prepare yourself for a 30-hour drive. So when Alex and I got to Miami, and when the Gumball ended, it was just kind of one of those things like, that was awesome. And you're on such an adrenaline rush and such a high for the whole time you're doing it that when it's all over, you sort of feel deflated and you're kind of sad it's over and you want the next adventure and what's happening next. And it was all just kind of depressing a little bit that all of this fun and all of this adrenaline starts to rush out of your body, and it's like, what are you left with? And I didn't know that it was going to lead to anything else with Alex Roy and I just knew that I forged a cool relationship with a guy that I hadn't known, more than 2 months before. And, we just had a great time together. And, we became pretty good friends and would hang out in New York City after that. Would I put him on my best friend list? No, but he's a great guy, and he's definitely become one of those shirt off his back kind of friends for me. I've been through some tough times, and, he's always been there and said, you need a place to stay, you need an apartment. He's been a great friend in that regard.
A watch can do a lot more than just tell time. It can make a statement to the world or show people a little bit more about who you want to be. Vincero offers an awesome line of designer watches at a great value that you can check out today at the link in the description below. You can also use the code VINwiki for a discount at checkout. So be sure to check them out and thank them for their support of the channel and find your next watch. It might start a great conversation, turn some heads, or who knows, lead to your next great story.